You're listening to 1053, The Gerblin, Dominaria's #1 music source for generic goblin noise.
Hey gang, just to let you know, you can now use the promo code MTGMudsta, all caps, at flipsidegaming.com and originalmagicart.store. Using the code gets you 10% off orders $10 or more, and you get to help out the channel at the same time. Also, I want to bring to your attention the Kickstarter from Original Magic Art, where they're trying to get some sweet Commander/EDH generals onto playmats. He's directly working with the artists, so you'll be able to help support them, and if you use the affiliate link below, you'll also be able to help support me and get your hands on some of these sweet playmats. Hey gang, and welcome back. This week we have some new commanders, some old faces, and a new friend. Tal is playing his Regna and Krav deck, keeping Intangible Virtue, Blind Obedience, Swamp, 2 Plains, Memorial to Glory, and Desert of the True. Joey, who's new to the channel, is playing Riku, and he keeps Frontier Bivouac, Forest, Tempt the Discovery, Parallel Lives, Stomping Ground, Rootbound Crag, and Cascading Cataracts. Ben is playing his Rona deck and keeps a Swamp, an Island, Drowned Catacomb, Mycosynth Lattice, Sly Requisitioner, Marionette Master, and Executioner's Capsule. Kirsten is playing her Tatiova deck and keeps Territorial Baloth, Azusa Lost but Seeking, Secrets of the Golden City, Lorescale Kodal, Preordain, and an Island. Joey wins the die roll and starts us off. Joey plays a tap Frontier Bivouac and passes. Tal plays a tap Desert of the True and passes. Kirsten plays an Island and she casts Preordain, scrying 2 and then drawing a card. Ben plays a Swamp and he casts Executioner's Capsule. Joey plays a Stomping Ground and has it come in tapped and passes. Tal plays a Swamp and we see a Blind Obedience. Kirsten plays a Forest and passes. Ben plays a Drowned Catacomb and also passes. Joey plays Rootbound Crag and passes. Tal plays a Plains and he casts a Pristine Talisman. Kirsten plays an Island and casts Psychic Corrosion for her turn before passing to Ben. Ben plays a Swamp and he casts a Riddlesmith and passes turn. Joey plays a Cascading Cataracts and casts Tempt with the Discovery. Ben is tempted but is quickly dissuaded by Kirsten. Joey then goes and finds a Simic Growth Chamber, bouncing the Cataracts back to his hand. At the end of turn, Tal taps his Talisman for 1 life. Tal plays a Plains for his turn, and he casts Utter End, exiling the Psychic Corrosion. He also pays the Exhort cost, drain the table for 1, and gains 1 as well from the Talisman being tapped. Kirsten plays a Forest, and she casts Azusa. She then gets to drop a second Forest for her turn, and passes. Ben plays an Island, and he taps out, tapping his Capsule to help pay for the Sly Requisitioner. Moving to combat, Ben then swings the Riddlemaster at Tal for 2. Joey plays his Cascading Cataracts again, and taps out to cast a Consecrated Sphinx, which comes into play tapped. Tal draws, and Joey draws 2. Tal then casts an Angel of Invention, fabricating to make 2 1/1 Thopters and gaining 1 life from the Talisman. Tal then plays an Orzhov Basilica, bouncing a land back to his hand, while Ben appreciates how nice the mat is. Kirsten draws, and Joey draws 2, and then she casts a Secret of the Golden City, drawing 2 more, and Joey draws 4 more. She then casts a Lorescale Coatl and passes to Ben. Ben untaps, and on his upkeep, he cracks his Capsule to kill the Sphinx, and gains a Servo token which comes in tapped. He then draws for turn, and he moves to combat, swinging all of his creatures at Joey and dealing 5. Joey casts an Oracle of Moldiah in his main phase, and he plays a Mountain. He then casts a Darksteel Ingot, and Tal reminds Joey to tap the Oracle. Joey then plays a tap Vivid Grove, which comes in with 2 counters, and he moves to his end step, discarding down a 7. Tal plays a Swamp, and pays 5 to cast Regna, gaining 1 life. He then moves to combat, swinging a Thopter at both Joey and Ben, and the Angel at Kirsten, dealing 2 to each of them. Tal gains 2 life from the Angel connecting, and he moves to his main phase, and then passes. At the end of turn, because he gained life, Regna triggers, and Tal gains 2 1/1 white warrior creatures. Kirsten's Lorescale gains a 1/1 counter when she draws for turn, and she casts a Tatiova in her main phase. She then passes to Ben. Ben plays an Inventor's Fair, and he casts Sidisi, Undead Vizier. He exploits his Servo, and he goes to tutor for a card. Ben is kind enough to show us that card, and it's a Tezzeret the Seeker. Joey draws for turn and reveals Eric Mechthys off the top. He casts a Mana Reflections and then brings out Thassa. With nothing else, he passes to Tal. Tal draws and plays a Plains. He then taps a Talisman to gain 1 life to help pay for Intangible Virtue. We then see Vraska's Scheming Gorgon hit the field, and Tal upticks her to give all of his creatures +1/+0. Moving to combat, Tal swings everything at Joey. Joey blocks one of the tokens with his Oracle, and then takes 21, while Tal gains 3 life from his Angel connecting. Tal then passes, and at the end of his turn, Regna triggers, gaining him 2 more Soldier tokens, and he passes. Kirsten draws and puts another counter on her lore scale. She then casts her Retreat to Coralhelm, and then casts Nisa's Pilgrimage. She double checks she has Spell Mastery, and grabs 3 forests. One of them comes in tapped, which gives Kirsten 1 life and draws her a card from Tatyova, and gives her lore scale another counter. She then plays a forest, scrying from the Coralhelm, keeping it on top, drawing it, gaining 1 life, and putting another counter on the lore scale. She then plays another forest, scrying, keeping it, drawing, gaining 1 life, and giving another counter to the lore scale. And we finally see her 3rd land drop for turn, and she bottoms the card this time, drawing a new one, gaining 1 life, and putting another counter on the lore scale. After discussing it with Ben, she then casts a Beast Within and blows up Joey's mana reflections, and with nothing else, she passes. Ben plays an island, and he casts Crux of Fate, choosing to destroy all non-dragon creatures, and passes to Joey. Joey scries with Thassa and bottoms the card. He then casts Riku, and casts Regrowth, copying the spell with Riku to return Tempt with Discovery and Mana Reflections. Joey then has to discard down to 7, and we see his copy of Tatyova hit the graveyard, and he passes turn. Tal casts a Maria Angel in his main phase, extorting it and draining his opponents for 1. He then plays a tap Memorial to Glory, and gains a bird token from the landfall trigger. Tal then downticks Vraska to destroy Riku, and he passes to Kirsten. Kirsten pays 6 to cast a Rampaging Baloth in her main phase, and we then see a Wood Elves. She goes to her library and finds a forest, which comes into play. This gives her another Scry trigger and a Beast token. Ben plays Tezzeret the Seeker he'd tutored for his turn before in his main phase, and he downticks his Walker for 3 and goes to find an artifact that costs 3 or less. He grabs a Burnished Heart, putting it onto the field, and he passes to Joey. Joey scries and keeps it on top. He plays a forest for his land for turn, and he recasts Mana Reflections. He then taps his lands to activate the Cascading Cataracts, which, because of Mana Reflections, makes 10 mana. Thankfully, Joey has his handy little sheet to help us keep track of what he makes, and he then uses 4 to cast Tempt with Discovery, but once again no one takes it. Joey grabs Alchemist's Refuge, and Tal reminds people to keep their creatures tapped. Joey then drops a Seedborn Muse, which comes in tapped. He then pays his remaining 2 and the Refuge to cast a tapped Fierce Empath, and he goes to find a Magmatic Force. At the end of turn, Tal taps the Talisman and gains 1 life. We see a Sunscorched Regent hit the field for Tal in his main phase, and Joey responds by activating his Refuge to cast Eternal Witness. He returns his Sphinx, which he then also casts. And Tal follows it up with an Aetherflux Reservoir, gaining 1 from the Talisman being tapped. With the Reservoir on the stack, Joey once again activates his Cataracts to make 10 mana, and he casts Comet Storm where X is 8, and targets Tal. Tal gains 1 life and a counter on his Regent, just as he has the last 2 times that Joey's cast a spell, and then drops to 51. Tal then activates the Reservoir, dropping to 1 life and dealing 50 to Joey. Tal then upticks Vraska, and he passes to Kirsten. Kirsten draws for turn, and we see a Malimo Marrow Sorcerer hit the field on her side tapped, and Tal gains 1. She then casts an Explosive Vegetation, with Tal gaining another 1. She grabs 2 basics and gains 2 Scry triggers and then 2 more Beast tokens. With nothing else, she passes to Ben. Ben draws for turn and plays a Swamp. He downticks Tezzeret by 1, which kills his Planeswalker, and Ben goes to find a Nile Spellbomb. Ben then casts a Marionette Master, fabricating it to give the Master 3 +1/+1 counters on it, and Tal gains another life. Ben then sacrifices a Spellbomb, paying 1 black to draw a card, and has the Master deal 4 damage to Tal and exiles Kirsten's graveyard. This takes Tal out, and with nothing else, Ben passes to Kirsten. Kirsten draws for turn and moves straight to combat, swinging everything into Ben. Ben blocks one of the beasts with the Marionette Master, which I now realize should have actually been tapped, and he takes the rest, dropping to 7. In her second main phase, Kirsten then recasts Tatyova, and then brings out a Territorial Baloth. With nothing else, she passes to Ben. Ben draws for turn, and he casts Teferi Temporal Archmage in his main phase. He then realizes he can't do anything to stop the onslaught on Kirsten's side of the field, and he concedes the game to her. Game review time. Boy, did Joey and his Riku deck get shut down hard. I don't really blame the table, as he drew 8 extra cards from the Consecrated Sphinx before it was taken out, and he then resolved Mana Reflections afterwards. I'd be scared too. I'm not sure if I would have done it on my turn like Tal did, but it is hard when he's running things like Alchemist's Refuge and Seedmore Muse, as basically anyone else's turn is just an extra copy of Joey's turn. It was nice to see some of the Battle Bond partner decks outside of the Izzet pairing in action. Regna is certainly the weaker of the two, but it was very interesting to see that Tal had built heavily around her. I've seen first-hand evidence of how good Krav can be in the 99, so it wouldn't have surprised me if it worked very well in tandem. Ben's Rona deck is actually his artifact build, and it's unfortunate that it didn't get going, since it's got some interesting synergies. He unfortunately missed quite a few land drops, and considering it is an artifact deck, many of his mana rocks. As a result, he had to take the back seat for most of the game, playing very defensively, and I think that's what basically put him behind. Kirsten's Tachiova deck is a fantastic example of a good landfall deck. She was able to squeeze out a ton of value from hitting her land drops, and it was fantastic to see it in action. It's always fun to see cards like Multani, Malimino, and Rampaging Baloth doing a lot of heavy lifting. In her deck, they certainly did. Please be sure to tune in every Monday and Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time for a guaranteed new video. You can also follow me on Twitter at MTGMudsta. You can find me on Facebook at facebook.com/MTGMudsta. And lastly, you can check me out when I stream at twitch.tv/MTGMudsta. This video is brought to you in support by my patrons. If you're looking for a way to help out the channel, please be sure to visit the link below. Thank you all for watching this video, and don't forget, friends are just opponents you haven't eliminated yet.